The system notified Liu Feng that the weapons production would be completed tomorrow. He dismissed his team, saying that today they can rest and they will deal with the rest tomorrow. At night in his room, Liu Feng lay and thought about how much had happened recently, and he was very glad that they were still able to return to the shelter, because finally he could have a good rest. Since tomorrow he needed to carefully think through his future plans, he immediately went to bed. Suddenly Sarah came into his room and lay in his bed. Liu Feng thought that she was sleepwalking again and decided that she could stay in his bed until dawn, when suddenly she whispered in his ear that she was not sleeping. Sitting up a little, she told him that he had fallen asleep too early. It was then that he realized that this was not sleepwalking. It was all like a movie about a secretary invading the director's office. Beautiful secretary and angry director in the office. Climbing onto her knees, the secretary said that she wanted to report to him. The boss tried to stop her, saying that it was no longer working hours, but she was not interested. She began to tell him that their stock prices had fallen a lot this month, and they needed to think about how to raise their prices. Liu Feng asked why she was doing this, to which Sarah replied that since he saved her, she admired him every day. But she is not like Li Xin and Kelly because they can go out, and Sarah can only express her love to Liu Feng when he returns home. After which, she began to cry. Liu Feng took her hand and said that he was ready to accept her pleasures, but only if she stopped crying. The secretary told her boss that if he didn't do better, the shareholders would replace him. At that moment, he realized that he could lose too. The secretary, straddling him on top, asked him to admit his defeat. A few minutes later, the secretary told the boss that he should quit because he was no longer enough to solve serious problems. The boss got angry, saying that she was underestimating her boss and he would show her what real work was like. Then he took the secretary lightly by the chin and whispered in her ear that she was very brave. Then he loaded her with overtime work and showed her on his desk how to enter the overtime work mode. While watching a stock chart, the secretary reported to her boss that the stock was going up too much and she couldn't contain her admiration for it. Just a few minutes later, the stock price reached its peak, and the secretary realized that it was too early to write off the boss if he was capable of such an explosion on the stock exchange. After all these reports, Sarah finally fell asleep. On the contrary, Liu Feng was charged with energy and even gained strength, all thanks to the increase in the value of the company's shares. Therefore, Liu Feng decided to go to the sauna because nothing is more relaxing than swimming after sports. Before he could dive into the pool and relax, Li Xin appeared behind him with a bucket in his hand. Before she could attack him, he grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Liu Feng asked Li Xin why she decided to sneak up on him and attack him. She got very angry and started beating him with her hands, saying that he was a fool if he still hadn't understood anything. After which, she angrily said that she knew that he had started a relationship with another woman behind her back. Liu Feng is doing badly, but he didn't understand who she found out about, Sarah or Kelly, and what should he do next. She also added that he was very disappointing. Liu Feng at that moment understood that Li Xin had now burned him, and what would happen if Kelly and Sarah also found out about each other. He understood that if everyone found out about each other, he would lose everyone and everything would be over, so he urgently needed to come up with something. At this moment, Liu Feng remembered that Li Xin had a fetish for thrills and loved variety. So he asked her if she was angry because he didn't call her. Seeing a humble reaction to his words, he said that it was okay because next time he would definitely invite her to a threesome, so that she doesn't feel shy. Before he had time to clarify the relationship, suddenly his younger sister and Aunt Li's daughter entered the sauna. Since he didn't want Xin Tong and Li to know about his relationship with Li Xin, he pushed her under the water, telling her that she should hide and then quietly leave. But since Li Xin had a fetish for thrills, she had no intention of going anywhere. It all began to resemble underwater adventures, Mara and Aquaman. Liu Feng asked her to behave properly since she was in Atlantis, but Mara said that today she would punish the Sea King. Mira used deep-sea magic to hinder the Sea King's movements. It was mean of her to use such magic in the water. Mara was shocked to see that the Sea King could withstand her sea magic, and I realized that it was not in vain that he is the ruler of the seas if he is capable of such a thing. At this moment, Xin Tong and Sister Li rushed to Liu Feng to help him wash, rubbing his body with brushes and soap. Aquaman couldn't hold back any longer and so made the room, saying that he didn't want to be underestimated. Mera was shocked. The stream was truly strong, and she could not resist it. The stream was so strong that even the mug that was standing on Kelly's table fell. Meanwhile, Sister Shin Tong and Sister Lee were doing their best to help Liu Feng wash not only his body, but also his hair. At this moment, Wu Liu Feng felt dizzy and his eyes darkened. He even thought that he had gone to heaven, because he had just done this right in Li Xin. At that moment, when the sisters were washing their brother's head out of the water, Li Xin appeared. Liu Feng was puzzled because he didn't think that Li Xin could last so little underwater, and it also seemed like she had something in her mouth. Just a moment later, the sisters also noticed that Li Xin had something in her mouth. So Sister Li asked her, did she also help Brother Liu Feng wash? Li Xin knew that she urgently needed to answer something, so she decided to spit out Liu Feng's thing, but she randomly took it and swallowed it. Liu Feng and his sisters were shocked to see this. The next morning, Liu Feng decided to show Dr. Qin the medical section. She couldn't believe that his hideout was so big. Arriving at the medical center, Liu Feng said that it consists of 2 rooms, an outer and an inner one. The outer one is a ward with beds, and the inner one is a laboratory. Both rooms are now completely free. They proceeded to the laboratory. The system said that the equipment was working normally and various studies could be carried out on it. Dr. Price immediately realized that the laboratory had artificial intelligence. After looking at the laboratory, Dr. Qin said that it was even better equipped than the one at the northern base. Although there is not much space, it is quite enough for one person. After that, he told her that she could bring those children of hers directly to the shelter, because here they could study. Since many children came to the shelter this time, he plans to find teachers and open a school, after the chief electrician left them. Dr. Qin gently kissed Liu Feng on the cheek, and in surprise he fell to the ground and she fell with him. At this point, the chief electrician decided to return because he had forgotten something. And I saw a very interesting picture. Seeing Liu Feng and Dr. Qin kissing behind the curtain, he couldn't believe his eyes. But in reality they were kissing, and the shadows simply distorted their actions. Liu Feng asked Dr. Qin to sit down on the couch to rest and recover from the fall. The electrician was shocked because he didn't understand how they could do this in daylight. And I decided to watch them a little more. Liu Feng asked Dr. Qin to take her time and move slowly so that she could fully recover. After recovering, Dr. Qin said that since he had a microscope, they could take a closer look at the fusion virus and see how they could help his sister. The head electrician was a lone wolf, so he simply could not accept such a thing. We know he knew that Liu Feng had Li Xin, and he simply did not dare to do something like that with Dr. Qin. So he decided to break in and prevent the betrayal. But the video is more and more passionate shadows. He just fell to the floor. Dr. Qin said that by using the genome of the fusion virus as a basis and using Liu Feng's equipment, she might be able to create an inhibitory vaccine. Seeing this whole picture, the chief power engineer was horrified because it was disgusting to him, and he promised that as soon as he became the head, he would punish such dogs. After all, traitors are the worst thing in this world. It's like a cancer of society. Cancer! When suddenly, a very beautiful girl with chic curves approached him and asked if he was okay. Seeing her, he was immediately blinded by her beauty. The girl told him that something was broken in their building and asked him to look and fix it. The chief electrician happily agreed and said that of course he could help, after which he immediately realized that he had fallen for her tenderness. At this moment, Dr. Qin explained everything about how she could carry out reverse research and help Liu Feng's sister, after which she offered to conclude an agreement, saying that he will help her pick up the children from the base and take them to the underground city. In return, she will help him create an inhibitory serum. At this moment, Liu Feng's people realized that Dr. Qin Yi did not want to join the shelter. She immediately asked for his forgiveness, saying that she could not join for now, because there isn't one thing she can't leave. Hearing this, he offered her his help. Before they could talk, the system suddenly notified Liu Feng that the construction of the weapons factory had been completed, saying that the shelter could be upgraded to the 3rd level. Hearing this news, he immediately ran to look at the brand new weapons factory. Everyone was amazed by the amazing build quality of this weapons factory. but Li Xin and the sniper already wanted to check the quality of this weapon. A few minutes later, taking a couple of samples of the finished weapon, Li Xin carried out a check. After testing, she said that it was an excellent weapon. Kelly said the plant is currently capable of producing Tier 1 firearms and ammunition, such as AK-47, M1911A1, Browning M37 shotgun, Dragunov sniper rifle, fragmentation grenades, ammunition, and much more. Li Xin told Liu Feng that since they now had such capabilities, it was worth building a shooting range to train the guards. He agreed, saying that he would entrust this matter to her and Long Xuan. They will have to choose the future guards, and the head one will be Li Xin. After which he ordered the system to completely upgrade the shelter to the 3rd level and also begin building a shooting range. The system replied that the shelter would be ready in 2 days. Liu Feng decided to take a walk in the center of his refuge and met 2 beautiful actresses in a bar who saw him and invited him to the bar, offering him a drink with them. Seeing the actresses, Liu Feng understood that he had nowhere to hide from them. He also remembered that when he was a teenager, they were his sexual fantasy, and then he only had photographs of them. And now they were right in front of him, and, looking into his eyes, they realized how majestic he still was. But he was so nervous that he couldn't control his facial expression. Suddenly, a moment later, his reputation increased by 1 point. He realized that when the actresses saw him, they were immediately scared. And because of this, his reputation increased by 1 point. Seeing that his reputation was growing, he decided to join the girls and be tougher with them, so he could test whether his reputation really does grow when he is cruel. At that moment, one of the girls told the other that she had heard that stars could survive in this apocalypse only by trading themselves, and she asked her friend if they should make these sacrifices. Xu Qianqian was naturally charming and also had high communication skills. She could definitely figure out Liu Feng's true intentions. The girls asked Liu Feng if he would like to drink something stronger, to which he replied that he would drink milk. The girls were shocked because he didn't fall for their flirting. They were also surprised that he was able to resist them, because this was the first time in many years that they had failed to charm someone. They could believe that the leader of the underground city, such a frightening and serious man, drinks milk instead of whiskey. But Sister Li told the story that brother Liu Feng had loved drinking the milk that her mother sent him since childhood. Before she could finish her story, Liu Feng noticed that his reputation had again increased by 233 points, although he did not seem to do anything for it. He decided that he needed to say something to the girls, because in the end they could be friends, but instead he coughed 3 times. Hearing that he coughed 3 times, the girls thought that they would have to come to his bedroom at 3 in the morning and realized that they could not avoid this fate. They stood up, turned around and left, saying that they understood everything. At this moment, Liu Feng was very upset, because he thought that he had somehow offended the stars. After this incident, Liu Feng decided to go up to the command post. Seeing Liu Feng, Kelly stood up and slammed her heel on the ground, saying that everyone should stand up and greet the director. Liu Feng greeted him and said that there was no need to greet him so formally, but Kelly told him that the director must live up to his status, after which she asked him to take his honorary place as director. The meeting has begun. Sitting in the center of the table, Liu Feng wondered if he needed to pretend to be strict now. Kelly stood up from the table, saying that since everyone was present, they can proceed to their first question, saying that now that the problem with creating weapons has been solved, she proposes to create a security detachment of 30 people, because recently 2 groups have gathered around the base. The first is the Salvation Army, and the second is the monotheists who pose a direct threat to the shelter. Liu Feng asked Kelly to tell us more about these groups. Kelly said one of the groups, the Church of One God, has recently been active in the south of the city. The rate of spread is very high. Their slogan is that belief in the Day of Judgment will save you from the bonds of worldly vanity. Another group near the shelter is the Salvation Army. This gang was created by thugs. They have already gathered about 200 people. Li Xin laughed, saying that the Salvation Army sounded like a bunch of collective farmers. Long Shun asked Liu Feng, "Didn't they capture the high priest of the monotheists?" Liu Feng replied that she was captured and asked his younger sister to bring her. A couple of seconds later, Shin Tong brought in the high priest of the monotheists, dressed in a short prison tunic with a black leather collar around her neck, holding her by the leash. Li Xin immediately asked her to tell her what she knew about the development of the Church of One God and its appearance.